And before I start, in case you wonder what kind of accent that is, I'll not let you speculate for too long. So this is a mix of my native Bulgarian, Russian, German, and Danish. So bear with me regarding my English. So multinational corporations, what about their local employees? Globally, there are about 60,000 multinational corporations. These are typically large firms that are headquartered in one country and operate in multiple other foreign locations. Multinational corporations are powerful entities. They possess massive corporate power and financial health. And we also know they can exercise significant political influence. These multinationals have around 500,000 foreign subsidiaries around the world. Now, from the perspective of management scholars and international business scholars, there are primarily two groups of employees in a multinational. One is the so-called expatriates. Expatriates are typically managers or specialists, experts, who are assigned by the headquarters of the multinational to undertake an international assignment in a foreign subsidiary. So expatriates consist or constitute around 20% of the population of multinationals globally. So we can see it's actually quite a minority. The vast majority of the workforce in a multinational is actually the local employees. In international business, we call them host country nationals, so HCNs. Now, for a very long time, for more than 5 decades, international business scholars have been really focused on and rather preoccupied with expatriates. We have studied them on all possible dimensions, in all possible aspects. To that extent that for every 50 articles on expatriates, we actually only have one on HCNs. So there seems to be quite a divide and quite a substantial research gap. Now, I would argue this is an unjustified one. So in addition to the fact that these are the majority of the workforce of the multinational, we need to point out that those HCNs are actually the ones who engage in performing core jobs and core functions in the multinational. So in fact, it is actually them who generate the wealth of the multinational. So it is true enough that they work in their home country, they don't leave their home organization, but we also need to emphasize that the work that they perform is global, it is international, both directly through their interaction with their foreign colleagues, the expatriates, but also indirectly in terms of them contributing to our global value chains. So why does it matter whether we address that gap or not? Well, I have argued together with colleagues and on my own that it matters, and it actually matters a lot. It is important to understand and understand better and in greater depth the majority of the multinational workforce. We need to investigate issues and topics as well as organizational responses that relate to MNC, multinational corporations, employees all together, and also understand their distinct knowledge, and not only talk about and focus on the knowledge that, or the superior knowledge typically, that expatriates possess. We also need to comprehend, and if we do that, we will also be able to improve the relationship and the interactions between the two groups, or between the two camps, HCNs and expatriates. And that would be important for the benefit of both groups, as well as for the benefit of the company. It matters more than ever, here and now, And it will matter also in the future, more than it has mattered in the past, bearing in mind present and also future political tensions and conflicts. So, now, having realized, or if I have convinced you there is a substantial gap, I will very briefly talk about how I have contributed to addressing that particular gap. So through my research, I have documented and I have argued and I have proved that HCNs are not what they are perceived actually to be typically, both in practice but also in the literature. They are not mere recipients of the superior knowledge of expatriates. In fact, they are very, very important senders of knowledge. We should not forget that multinationals typically invest in a foreign location in order exactly to gain access to the specific knowledge that is available in a particular market. And so the people who actually possess that knowledge, who know about how an institutional environment works, what are the norms that are acceptable and appreciated in a particular country, is not expatriates. They do not have that knowledge. It is actually HCNs. So if that is the case, why would we consider them as only recipients of knowledge? Based on the knowledge-based view in management, I have examined both theoretically and empirically a number of different behaviors that take place in relation to knowledge in multinationals. So some of those are listed here. I have studied knowledge-sharing hostility, knowledge hoarding, knowledge hiding, knowledge manipulating, knowledge rejecting. Now, these are types of behavior where the dominant literature in international business and also in management would actually deem as counterproductive organizational behaviors. But my research has shown that these are not necessarily counterproductive behaviors. They can actually be very well justified and a smart coping mechanism on behalf of particularly HCNs in terms of how they deal with a number of complex situations in their exchange with expatriates. And just to continue in terms of contributions, so on the basis of a particular theory, which is a classical one in the field of management, social exchange theory, together with a colleague, we theorized about why and how HCNs go actually through quite demanding, quite intense adjustment processes, both in terms of intercultural exchanges and also other types of exchanges when they work with the expatriates. And that was quite novel in the international business literature, because when it comes to adjustment, again, the focus has always been only, not even primarily, only on expatriates, how they adjust to a new culture, how they adjust to a new country, and so on and so forth. So some of our key findings relate to the fact that HCNs, somewhat counterintuitively, experience actually a more focused form of disruption as compared to expatriates. We have also documented that HCNs interactions are with typically a relatively small number of expatriates and are in a very typically in a very specific setting. And so that makes kind of not only the interaction, but also the disruption that goes along with this interaction much more intense. And so the challenges and the difficulties, the discomfort, the different types of stresses become also much more intense. There is also this part of HCN's adjustment, which is quite interesting, we have argued, in terms of having a particular discretionary component, in the sense that they can actually decide to withdraw from the interaction altogether rather than adjust their behavior. And that could be really counter-beneficial to everyone, particularly expatriates, but also the MNC, the multinational corporation. Now, that was about HCNs, host country nationals. Now, beyond that, I have led a team that has redefined the concept of ethnocentrism in the field of international business. So for about 60 years in international business, we have not only believed, but actually assumed quite explicitly sometimes that it is bad to be ethnocentric. So we have basically turned that assumption on its head, and we have argued that ethnocentrism can be also neutral and in some cases even positive. I have looked very carefully into context and contextualization as a process and have argued why they are important in terms of making international business research in particular more relevant, more applicable, but also more rigorous and more interesting. In terms of methodology, one of my key contributions is related to the fact that one can actually start a new spiral of theorizing in the process of exiting field work during qualitative research. So not during the field work as such only, but also in the very process, which can be a quite prolonged process of exiting the field. Finally, my more recent research is occupied with how multinational corporations are involved, whether they know it or not, whether they realize it or not, whether they acknowledge it or not, how they are implicated in labor exploitative practices, including in the most extreme form of exploitation, and that would be modern slavery. So, thank you.
Thank you, Snejina. Questions? Yes.
In the multinational construction area in particular, there is also another group of people. So you've got the expats, you've got the HCNs, but then you've got a group that are brought in from other countries as the labour on construction sites.
Yep.
And from the sort of little bit of knowledge that I've learned, there's a huge difference in the way that group is treated from country to country and corporation to corporation. Does your studies extend into that group as well?
Yes. So there are different streams of literature. In the stream of literature where I'm positioned, this, what you call a third group of employees, this would be actually in the camp or in the group of host country nationals, because they are not expatriates. But I think the question is highly relevant because one of the things that we have faced for a long, long time is that we have treated HCNs as a rather homogeneous group. We have never looked into any kind of classifications of who are they. Do they differ on some dimensions or not? And they do differ. They differ a lot in terms of whether, for instance, whether they speak the language of the expatriate or not, in terms of the functions and the jobs they perform, whether they interact in their everyday job with an expatriate or not. And so it is a really varied group. But again, we just left them behind. And when HCNs have been mentioned, because they are mentioned in the international business literature, in fact, quite frequently, it is unacceptable that whenever that has been happening over a longer period of time, they have always been mentioned there in the shadow of the expatriates, right? So they have never been the central actors, the one who deserve to be in the spotlight. And this is a problem. So this is why we have allowed ourselves in our discipline to just, oh, no, they are there. Look, they also, the term exists or is there in the title, in the abstract of the publication and so on. Yeah, but they're just mentioned. And they're mentioned in terms of how they support the expatriates, how they help the expatriates adjust, and, but never the other way around. And so that needs to stop.